Hello everybody. Did you know that in 2012 the best-selling car in the entire world was a Ford Focus? Yet for 2025 the model is to be discontinued, with likely no direct successor. Instead, what is to come after I expect to be a god-awful, highly generic crossover that's almost certainly going to be electric and cost a lot more money. If you think that's a terrible idea, you're not alone. In fact, I recently did a piece discussing the future of Ford and why I'm concerned they may not actually have one. And it would appear that in order to evolve the brand, or to you and me, try and make even more money, they seem more than willing to detonate decades and decades of good, sensible, logical products that appeal to a large audience and are excellent to drive, and perhaps even more tragically, they're also willing to totally and completely disregard the massive amount of goodwill that the brand has built up over the years. Ford fans are some of the most loyal I've ever encountered, yet they don't really seem to factor in the Blue Oval's plans. Not being a Ford fan myself, I was concerned how the community would take the piece, but it seems many of you were in agreement with what I had to say, including a young gentleman called Sam, who got in touch and said, "James, I am a big Ford fan." He's about the same age as me, he's in his early 30s, and he's recently bought his dream car, which is this, a Ford Focus RS edition. He got in touch with me and said, "James, in light of the fact there is to be no 4th generation Focus RS, would you like a chance to revisit the 3rd and final?" And I said, yes, of course I would. So here I am. If you're a Ford fan currently on the hunt for your next purchase, don't forget to use CarVertical, the super-powered super search that cross-references a number of databases from around the globe to give you all the information you want on any potential used car purchase, including possible mileage discrepancies, accident damage, regardless of whether a car has been written off or not, and things like handy hints and tips, common failure points to look out for when looking at certain models. All you need is a registration or VIN number, and don't forget, for 10% off on the service, use my link in the description down below. To recap, this is a 2018 Ford Focus RS edition, and the 3rd generation RS was a car that even at launch was not without controversy, particularly amongst Ford fans. You see, this was the first car to be built under the new One Ford plan. Previously, the Focus had been a car which really was 2 separate models, one built chiefly for the Europeans and one built chiefly for the North American market. But for this car, they wanted one that could suit everybody. That turned out really to be just about the least controversial part of the whole thing. Instead, what upset people was the fact this car was sold exclusively as a 5-door, where previously it had been a slightly shapelier 3. Also, and I think the greatest upset, was the fact that where before you had a gorgeous Volvo-derived 2.5-litre 5-cylinder engine that really helped the Focus RS and ST stand out, this was instead powered by a 2.3-litre EcoBoost engine, as you would have found in the Mustang. It received bespoke tuning, so here made 350 horsepower and 350 pound-foot of torque. That's 470 newton meters. That was connected exclusively to a 6-speed manual gearbox, but for the first time in Hot Focus history, it was also gifted a 4-wheel drive system with a rear differential engineered by GKN. The idea being it could send up to 70% of its power to the rear wheels. The car also famously introduced a drift mode, meaning that now your Ford fan no longer required the use of a McDonald's tray to have fun in a car park. But very quickly there were a few issues. Engines started to fail for the most embarrassing of reasons. It was rumoured they simply hadn't put the head gasket on the right way round. They were also allegedly suffering from overheating issues. And I recall very distinctly when these cars were driven by journalists, on one of the tracks they were at, they were told after every single lap to come through the pits because it was deemed that the brakes and the 4-wheel drive system simply couldn't withstand the punishment being given. And that really, I think, was a little bit embarrassing. In spite of this, the car sold like hotcakes and people couldn't get enough of them, with wait times being easily in excess of a year. car is an example of the run-out edition, and it shows you how little of a Ford fan I am, that when Sam told me he had a Focus RS edition, I really didn't know why he kept saying edition. I just thought, it's an RS, Sam, you stopped calling it an edition, it's just an RS. And then I began to think, oh, maybe actually he's saying the right thing and my head isn't working properly, and actually there was another car they made that maybe is a bit like an Audi S-Line, and it's not really an RS at all, but just some sort of RS lookalike thing that they've built. No, none of that is the case. This is essentially a limited edition 500 produced model that was made to essentially see the car out. To that end, it was all the stuff you got in a normal Focus RS. No more power, no difference to the gearbox. But what the edition actually gave you was a whole host of optional extras as standard, including some carbon fiber touches in here, which I really do like. These Recaro bucket seats, which I love. They are quite comfortable, but also very hugging too, with quite firm side support, more so than you might expect, almost Porsche-like. The edition also gives you the little blue strip of leather that runs around the edge. Outside you have black wing mirrors, black wheels. This has the lightweight optional items on it. You also got a little inlay for the RS badging on the wing, which I do quite like and lifts it just a little bit. But the oddest part of all is the fact you got a black foil roof. And that is the exact wording that they use, a foil roof. Not quite sure what they were thinking with that one. Perhaps it's a tribute to the good old days when you'd option your car with a vinyl roof, or simply a nod to the fact that many a Ford fan wasn't exactly picky with where they put wraps and things on their cars. So they just thought, you know what, we'll stick some black stuff on the roof. That'll do fine. People like that stuff apparently. The kids love it. Yeah, that's just weird. I'm really not sure about that, and I'm pretty convinced if you were to peel it off, and I think you can peel it off, you would just find regular blue paintwork on there. I think it would have looked much nicer if it was painted a nice graphite, like the wing, which is a sort of dark grey with quite a lot of metallic in it. That would be better. Turning circle in this thing is absolutely terrifyingly bad. You also got the RS Deluxe pack, which gave you things like a heated screen. You've got a heated steering wheel in here too, start, stop, and various other features. But you could have had basically all that in a regular car and would have paid the same money. But with the edition, you also got a Quaife limited slip differential at the front, which essentially, if you went for the edition, you got for free. And this does really improve the performance because, though the cars have an all-wheel drive system, they are still very much front biased. So by adding that, it does improve the car's traction and therefore performance. If you'd like to know a little bit more about this car, please make sure to check out Sam's channel, because he also is a fellow YouTuber. He's only just started out, and if you want to go and see more about this car and his opinion on it, why he's got it, and what it's like to live with, please check it out. I'll put the link in the description down below. Naturally, this being a fast Ford, it wasn't left alone for all that long, and to the standard specification, it has had a Revo Stage 2 map, making a claimed 440 horsepower, though Sam says, let's quote, a more modest 400. Torque, I don't know. It's also got a short shifter kit and the obligatory AirTech gubbins under the bonnet, including an intercooler and an air filter, which to me looks like someone's left the wrapping on, but apparently that's how it's meant to be. And of course you have a Miltech sports exhaust with a sports cat, meaning it now sounds like a teenager that doesn't want to get out of bed. Honestly, put your foot down and it just goes, ah! It's not a nice noise, is it? Particularly compared with that glorious sound of the old 5-cylinder. However, modified Fords not always being to my taste is about as newsworthy as saying the Sahara Desert is sandy. Instead, what I'm here today to work out is whether this still deserves a place amongst the many genuinely great driver's cars the company has built. So, as I now have a nice clear piece of road ahead of me and the car is all warmed, let's put my foot down and find out what it's like to have fun. Okay, First thoughts, it's not slow. This thing really shifts. Sam is claiming just 400 horsepower for this, but I suspect were he to stick the car in a dyno, I wouldn't be surprised if it made a little bit more. These were never the lightest of things, about 1,560 kilos, so the fact it moves as well as it does really impresses. I am also not a big fan of the short shift kit which has been fitted. It's very vague, very indistinct, and makes the gearbox not at all pleasant to use. I also hasten to add that none of these modifications were installed by Sam. They were all there when he got the car, and I do know he is considering reversing some of them. Two items that are standard are the suspension and the brakes. The suspension does alter with the drive mode, so you have normal, sport, racetrack and drift. On the road, it is generally recommended to use either normal or sport, and you do notice a few differences, though in all honesty, even in normal at lower speeds, it's got a very firm, jittery ride, this car. It never really settles. In sport, that gets even worse, but it does bring a little bit of extra weighting for the steering that I kinda like, although we'll discuss this more in a bit, and it also makes the car a little bit keener to pop and crackle. However, if you do drive it hard enough, it will also do that in normal mode too. It's just a little keener in sport. Race and drift I'm going to be staying well clear of, on account of the fact I'm not on a racetrack, nor am I any good at drifting, and this certainly isn't the place to be doing it. However, what I would like to talk about, for just a minute I promise, is this car's credentials as a regular daily driver, because that's one of the really interesting things when looking at a fast Ford. You see, the vast majority of them really do need to be cars which can do everything, on account of the fact that for many people they are likely to be their one and only car. So what size of smile it puts on your face down a back road is certainly important, but also what size of pram you can put in the back is also equally as vital. And here I'd say the Focus does okay. As a 5-door, many would consider it to be more practical than the old 3. But the downside here is that because of the all-wheel drive system, the boot is disappointingly small. To me, it doesn't really feel dramatically bigger than that in, say, the Fiesta. On the plus side, I suppose you could kid yourself that the all-wheel drive means this is going to be an excellent car when the snow arrives, but you've likely put tyres on that are so sporty, actually, it won't be any good at all. Fuel economy can be reasonable. On the journey here today, which I think took Sam about an hour and a half, he achieved 32 to the gallon, which is respectable, though frustratingly, the tank isn't quite as big as I'd like, 51 litres, so your range really is often about 300 miles, less if you're having fun. Room in the back is actually fairly decent, and the level of trim in there, I suppose, is a little better than you might expect. Not as high quality as, say, a Golf, but it more than does the job. You've also got plenty of little places to store various oddments, so if you have a family, it's not a terrible car, but it's also not the best. There is, as standard, an uprated Sony stereo, which also features navigation, DAB, and, bless it, a CD player too. When you're not on it, the exhaust actually isn't all that intrusive, and I'd say just about livable, particularly for this car's target market. Another thing which could be either for or against the RS, depending on your perspective, is that it has seemed fairly resistant to depreciation. Perhaps because it's well known this is now to be the final Focus RS, even if you want a high miles example of the early car, you'd be looking at paying around £23,000, but for an edition such as this, more like £33,000. In other words, it basically hasn't depreciated at all. The good news is that there really isn't much in the way of options to choose from. They're nearly all the same. The only two that I think this car has are the lightweight alloy wheels and the frankly fabulous door guards that everything should have. Those are a genius piece of design and just brilliant. I want those on everything. Ferrari should do those. Now just there, that short shifter, I tried to go into first and it resisted me. It didn't want to go in. After a little bit of persuasion it did, and once you're on the move it seems to be okay, but I have the feeling it's not quite set up right. And I have to say, I've got similar feelings about the steering. I know many road testers have problems with the brakes on these, but truthfully, for the roads that I'm driving and the speed I'm doing, they are absolutely fine. On track, I'm sure you wouldn't feel that way, but for daily duty, they're okay. A little over-servoed, but that's about the worst of it. However, the steering, it just doesn't work, and I don't simply mean the feedback and response either. It's the way the car goes around a bend. It feels hesitant. It feels like there's extra squidge in the suspension that there just shouldn't be. A couple of times I've gone into a tight bend where this car should be absolutely in its element, particularly with the all-wheel drive, but even as a simple front-wheel drive hatch, it should love a nice tight bend. You put your foot down, the diff will pull you out, but it's just, there's just a moment where you turn and you go, and you think it's not going to make it, but it does. It doesn't protest, it doesn't squeal, doesn't do anything, but it's really, really odd. In a moment, I'm going to get out onto the open road again and try and demonstrate what it is that I'm talking about. But before that, anything else to mention? Well, not really. The interior works, it's not particularly exciting, and if you want a Ford Focus RS, it's going to be like this inside. Even if you got one that wasn't blue, you still got blue stitching, such is the nature of Fords. Right, I'm now back in normal mode because that is where the suspension is its least intolerable. Still far too fidgety. There's no need for a car like this to be this firm. It's ridiculous. But anyway, I'm going to ignore that and put my foot down. How do they give something with all-wheel drive this much torque steer? Put your foot down and the car is all over the place. It does feel really, really unresolved, this. It's got grip. It will go around a bend. It hasn't screeched a single time, but still, it's just odd, this. Everything feels wrong. Feels like the car's sort of doing that, but on top of the tarmac. It's not natural, it's not right. It's weird. Just weird, I tell you. Reminds me actually in a lot of ways of the C8 Corvette that I recently drove. Very, very capable, not very involving. Still eggs you on though in both cases. And frankly, as a daily driver, it is kind of compromised. Sam also has a Golf R, which is really the sensible version of this. And I think for the vast majority of people, that would be a far, far better purchase. This for me, truthfully, is just a bit of an oddball. It hasn't got the dynamic prowess and the excitement of the Civic, nor does it feel like it has the refinement and the grown-up nature of the Golf. Instead, it's trying to sort of do both and succeeds at neither. And though I'm really loath to call it a bad car, because I think that would be unfair, unduly harsh, nor is it a really good car. I just can't think of a single reason why I would recommend this over just about anything else in its class. Oh, and the turning circle really is tragic. I suppose maybe this is because I simply am not, nor was I ever, the target audience for this kind of thing. It's designed to appeal to the sort of person that grew up, bought a Fiesta, then bought a Fiesta ST, then wanted the natural evolution of that, which this is. However, the big problem is, for many a Ford fan like Sam, where do they go next? They can't really even buy an older Ford because those are now obscene money. The Mondeo, which really would have been the next step, well, that's long gone, and I don't think many Focus RS owners are going to go and buy a Ford GT. So, no, I can't say I'm in love with the car. I really, really am sad about the fact that they aren't going to make any more. I would have loved them to have kept the 5-cylinder engine. I expect making this a one-world car might have had something to do with why they haven't. And as for whatever comes next, well, if the Mustang Mach-E is anything to go by, an electric performance Ford is unlikely really to be anywhere near as iconic or engaging as the old ones, and it certainly is going to be a lot more expensive. So I've really appreciated this opportunity to revisit the 3rd gen Focus RS. It remains a car that to me is just, I don't get it. I just don't get it. I get why people get it, but I don't get it. However, as for Ford, I think they are in trouble. Anyway, if you have made it this far, I want to say a big thanks to you. And if you happen to have another fast Ford that you'd like to see featured on the channel, please make sure to get in touch. But until the next time, I'd like to say a huge thank you to Sam once again for bringing his car out, and as ever, to you for watching. Don't forget to hit the like button, comment down below, and subscribe if you haven't already.